more efficiency can give you more options, that's what you want as a commander. Right? So now we're into this combat mode. It's actually affecting combat operations, right? Now he goes on, he moves on from this job. In 2003, he's running Army Material Command. In the northeast of the United States, where Army Material Command is, there's an outage, power outage. 50 million people in the United States lose electric power. What does he say about that? Well, we had a forward operation in Afghanistan, which would forward all the requisition back here being the United States. They had a generator and a satellite to talk. But when the outage hit here in the United States, they had no one to talk to. Okay? Army Material Command, supplying requisition for the troops in the field, suffered the Northeast outage. Right? So we quickly came up with backup plans, but it showed me the vulnerability. He says, quote, in some cases, the need to communicate with supply depots is day to day. The Afghan operation then was very fragile. Access was important. Everything was getting flown in because you couldn't get in a lot with each trip. We wanted a continuous flow. That's a factor in agility. If you have less material on the ground, you can be more agile. But with limited supplies, you don't want to be in constant, you want to be in constant contact. You want to have that continuous flow. When the power goes out in the United States, or if we have a lengthy collapse of the grid, the flow of material affects our troops in important ways. Right? So he had two direct experiences in how tactical operations were affected by fuel, both in the field and in the United States. So this brings me to a final point on combat. It's also about U.S. installations in the United States, which we also often don't think to. But what part of the Operation Afghanistan is done from here, right, that we know about? Drones. Most of the bombing is done from here. Intelligence. Most of the intelligence and the calls are done from here for operations. Requisition, we just heard. Requisition for the troops on the ground is done from here. So as a result, the Pentagon is also working on grid configuration here in the United States and trying to maybe perhaps create islands for certain installations that are critical to U.S. operations. Only now are they getting to that. Okay, so the energy efficiency of military installations is a main priority, with funding received from the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009. We know that as the stimulus bill. DOD got $7.4 billion, construction installations. You see that at facility sustainment, restoration, and modernization. And here's all the states that are receiving money as a result. So we've covered cost, we've covered combat, and now climate, right? When you think of a military officer, do you think climate change advocate? I mean, preventing climate change or limiting emissions of greenhouse gases? Usually not, right? It's usually not something we associate with the United States military. Believe it or not, they're out front. Their main point is this intersection of energy dependence, climate change, and national security. So there's the Quadrennial Defense Review that's drawn up, agreed to by all the services, signed out by the Secretary of Defense. It's released every 4 years by the Department. It's really a hallmark of the administration's policy priorities. The main point in this QDR of 2009 was climate change and energy are two key issues that will play a significant role in shaping the future security environment. And according to the QDR, first, climate change will shape the operating environment, roles, and missions that we undertake. Assessments conducted by the intelligence community indicate that climate change could have significant geopolitical impacts around the world, contributing to poverty, environmental degradation, further weakening of fragile governments. And just to show you how deep this goes, General Charles Boyd, U.S. Air Force, former Deputy Commander-in-Chief, Headquarters of European Command, he has also his story in here. I have a little bit of it. He just said, everything's going to be worsened by climate change in operations. He says, quote, When you add in some of the effects of climate change, the disruption of agriculture production patterns, the disruption of water availability, it's a formula for aggravating in a dramatic way the problem and consequences of large-scale dislocation. The more I think about it, General Boyd says, the more I believe it's one of the major threats, and it's not well understood. Right, so here he's admitting, former head of U.S. European Command, that they weren't configuring this in their plans. A major crisis. Like a Haiti, for example. But a landlocked Haiti, imagine. So, second in the QDR is DoD will need to adjust to the impacts of climate on its facilities and military capabilities. And in 2008, the National Intelligence Council judged that more than 30 U.S. military installations were already drowning, basically. They were under rising sea levels. So what were we going to do with these 30 military installations? Okay, and here's where, and some of them very critical, right? Air bases and certain islands. And here's where we get to the three. So here is where we get to the 3 Cs altogether. So in the QDR, basically says the department is increasing its use of renewable energy supplies and reducing energy demand to improve operational effectiveness, reduce greenhouse gas emissions in support of U.S. climate change initiatives, and protect the department from energy price. So we've got cost, we've got combat, and we've got climate. Right? So, right. So who's in charge? These are just some of the people that are in charge. I couldn't possibly fit them all on a page. They're all sit in the Pentagon, by the way. But these are the ones that are making the speeches. They're out on the stump. They're doing congressional testimony. They're releasing strategic planning guidance. They've named a few posts, new posts in the Pentagon across various policy, acquisition, logistics, and military services. Almost everybody now has to have somebody in charge of energy and the environment. Didn't used to be. The Navy and the Marine Corps are perhaps the most active in terms of getting out their messages. I've seen Ray Mavis speak twice just in the past year. Admiral Cullen gave us a briefing on Capitol Hill. Second, the Department of Defense has enhanced tools to manage energy risk. So now they have their strategy. I showed you. They have new policies. They have metrics, this burden cost of fuel. They have to scrub the budget to make sure that tactical systems and operations are fuel efficient. And they're getting out information to the sort of the furthest outpost of the United States military. Third, the department has reached out for technologies on the shelf. They're doing R&D for new stuff, but they're looking at applying the polyurethane foam, right? They're looking for stuff that's on the shelf now that they can apply immediately in operations. So they're holding conferences with industry specialists. There's just a conference on Capitol Hill this past week bringing in DoD and industry specialists. Fourth, the department has instituted a process of scrubbing budgets. I mentioned that already. The person in charge of that is Sharon Burke. Actually, the 2009 Authorization Act from Congress established this position. It's a brand new position. It's a very high level in the Pentagon, Assistant Secretary of Defense. It's like the equivalent of a 3-star position. And then fifth, DoD is working to make bases more efficient as well as protecting military installations, and this is Dorothy Roberts' job. So she's the one spending that Recovery Act money. Okay, so let me just end by giving an assessment of where I think it is. How far along is DoD in reaching their goals? It's tricky. And it's admitted by the general officers that culture still needs to change. Frankly, culture needs to change in the United States on energy, right? The leadership is still confined to mostly civilians in this effort, right? And a few Navy and Marine general officers. There has not been a revolutionary change in how the military overall does business yet, right? But I would say give them time. This is due perhaps to a difference in opinion between strategists and operators, right? According to insiders, the military is concerned that the focus on efficiency and cost-saving measures will cost lives. Their number one